Now, one of the most contentious issues at this conference will be the step-aside resolution. KZN is calling for it to be completely scrapped, while Mpumalanga supports the resolution. Our senior reporter, Siphamandla Goge, has been watching both provinces closely and joins us now. Siphamandla, good morning. A highly contentious issue, the step-aside resolution, I must say. But just gauging from the number of leaders you've managed to interact with, does it seem like there's a shared appetite to relook or interrogate the impact that this resolution has had on the party? And I must correct there a bit earlier where I said Mpumalanga supports the resolution. No, they support at least the deliberating around this particular resolution. So, but are you getting a sense that there's appetite collectively to interrogate this resolution?
One thing for sure that I can confirm to you, the item of the step-aside resolution will be added on the agenda, at least if things go according to the ANC in Limpopo and the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal. Those are the two biggest provinces of the ANC. Both of them support the scrapping of step-aside altogether. Mpumalanga says there is nothing wrong with the resolution. There is nothing wrong with step-aside. It was designed to basically revamp the battered image of the ANC. The Northern Cape, the Western Cape, the Eastern Cape, all of them are saying, why do you want to change the step-aside resolution? Leave it as it is. You can work on it to improve it. In fact, the Western Cape is calling for it to be made more stringent. So far, you've got two biggest provinces of the ANC, KwaZulu-Natal and Limpopo, saying the issue of step-aside will have to be re-looked at with an aim of, just putting it aside altogether. But I can tell you that the discussion is going to be intense on step-aside, which will be so unfortunate because really this conference does not need to spend time discussing the issue of step-aside. It's a policy conference that has got to discuss socio-economic policies of the ANC as the governing party. How is the ANC as the governing party going to change the lives of the people of Mpumalanga, Limpopo, the Eastern Cape, Northern Cape, and across KwaZulu-Natal? And at the center of it, really, this policy conference comes at a time whereby the situation in the country is not good in terms of the costs of living that are escalating, issues of the economy that is not growing, poverty, inequality, unemployment, energy crisis, rolling blackout from or by ESCOM. Those are the things that need to be discussed here. Healthcare, education, and social transformation. The issue of step-aside does not need to take center stage, but unfortunately it is set to feature, prominently here. Earlier on, I spoke to Zizi Godwa, who is the member of the National Executive Committee of the ANC, who is also part of the Peace and Stability Committee of the ANC, or cluster of the ANC, as we know that there is a lot that is happening in the country in terms of peace, security and stability. South Africa is a society or a country that is plagued by violent crime, porous borders, and the issue of immigration will come to the fore here because Mpumalanga and Limpopo as border provinces have strongly told eNCA that they will push for stringent measures to improve the securing and policing and management of the country's borders. Let's take a listen to what Zizi Godwa said on that point of immigration.
I have no doubt that we need an overhaul of immigration in South Africa. There is no doubt about it. At the same time, we need to strengthen the existing immigration laws. If you look, I had a visit a number of borderlines, whether you're talking about Maseru and others. We need, and without being suggesting that we must be xenophobic, but we need to protect our own territorial integrity. We make sure that all South African people who come to South Africa, regardless of their nationality, they come to South Africa but they respect our laws. And I think there is no doubt that in this conference, among others, it must discuss this issue of immigration laws. And the point I'm making is that part of what I will personally make sure that I sponsor in a discussion is that we need to have an overhaul of the immigration laws in South Africa.
Just listening to that clip, that is most certainly going to be a very, very important discussion, because I think many, even South Africans, are just looking to hear the ANC come out openly and state where they stand on internationalism. I know that Lindiwe Zulu is in fact the subcommittee chair for that one, where they'll be deliberating on internationalism, or in pursuit of progressive internationalism. And we would have seen some of those articles that came out where she said countries need to take responsibility for their own citizens. So very, very contentious issue that one.
Absolutely, simply because if you take into account the fact that the majority of foreign nationals who are in the country, they come mainly from the so-called frontline states. If you are talking about the issue of immigration in the country, you need to take into account South Africa's liberation struggle and how neighboring countries, be it Swaziland, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Namibia, and Zambia, and others held the country. But you also have other or some foreign nationals who come from other countries which were not necessarily frontline states during South Africa's struggle for liberation. But the ANC has been very diplomatic and cautious in how it deals with the issue of immigration in the country, taking into account the historical background and perspective. But for now, with the growing public pressure to do something decisively when it comes to immigration, the ANC is set at least to deal with that issue here at this gathering, and they will have to be firm in what they resolve, because come 2024, it does appear as if the issue of immigration policy will take center stage when political parties campaign for the general election. But also another point that has emerged here, we got the confirmation from Zizi Kodwa that ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa has appeared before the Integrity Committee of the governing party over the Phala saga. Let's take a listen.
The President, we can confirm, based on the report we received from the National Working Committee, he has met with the Integrity, as he has already committed in previous meetings that he will voluntarily appear before the Integrity, which is a good thing to do and appreciated and welcomed.
To appear is enough, but to answer questions is another thing.
To answer questions only would come at the end when we receive a report. It can't on the basis of a half meeting of engagement with the Integrity, and already there are speculations about which questions were asked to the President. All what I'm saying is that engagement was inconclusive, and they agreed it's not the first time that a member appears before the Integrity and they don't complete and finish their engagement. They will continue with the President, but we welcome the fact that the President has already appeared at least once before the Integrity Commission.
They adjourned because it is reported that he was unable to answer questions. There was a stalemate.
What we are discussing is speculations. These speculations are very dangerous, and they've got political motives to sustain a particular false agenda. All what we are saying is that let's allow that process internally to proceed. At the end of that process, we'll be able to comment.
What a very powerful statement on your part when you went on to say it's one thing to appear, it's another to answer. But I don't know if you got a sense that indeed he did answer, because from what we're hearing on the clip, Mr. Godwa is merely saying that it's speculation. So there's not much clarity as to whether he did answer or he did not, as per the articles this morning.
If he answered, he would not be going back to the Integrity Committee. The fact that there will be round number 2, it simply means they are not done with the issue. They did not do much in terms of what sources are telling us. He appeared, they had a discussion. It appears as if there was a stalemate in terms of the direction that their engagement was taking, and the ANC President fully answering questions, and they adjourned and said they will call him back after the policy conference of the ANC. So there's not been much movement. It was just a mere appearance, and he did not answer questions. He will go back, hopefully, to answer questions that he had not answered. Let's bring it back here now to the policy conference of the ANC, as delegates behind me are trickling in. We expect the program to get underway, should I say, in an hour from now. It's delayed. It was meant to get underway an hour ago. We understand that there are some issues, even though the ANC has not confirmed, but we do understand that some provinces, including the Free State, are not happy with the composition of the delegates that are attending this policy conference. They have threatened legal action to say if it continues with the delegation from the Free State, they are going to court because they were not selected from the branches and regions. But nonetheless, let's now engage our analyst here, Lihle Ngobuzi, who will talk to us about this important policy conference. Thank you very much for your time. You know better than myself on issues of governance. On the ANC's discussion documents, their policy on governance, if you look at the current challenges facing, governance, be it at a national, provincial and local level in particular, many municipalities are performing dismally. You look at the report of the Auditor General, it's just a shame what is happening. Do you think this policy conference has got the capacity to produce something different on governance which will lead to improving the lives of South Africans?
I think the ANC currently is having a governance crisis beyond just issues of state capture and the malfeasance that we're seeing in the public service. I think issues of do we have the requisite skill sets within our public service and our officials that are part of the municipalities, public institutions as well, do they have the requisite skill sets to be able to move the country forward from a governance perspective? And if we're looking at South Africa as a developmental state, governance plays quite a critical role in being able to manage public institutions and to do so in a way that serve the average citizen of South Africa. And the policy conference now needs to take quite decisive steps in articulating what is the role of the branch in relation to governance, what is the role of the party itself when it deploys particular people within public service and within, of course, institutions that are meant to fundamentally serve the public. And in the absence of that particular conversation, we will see that these governance issues will continue to play out beyond just issues of malfeasance and unethical practices, but also around the capacity. Do these institutions have the kinds of instruments available at their disposal, finances and so on and so forth, and the kinds of instruments that are required for us to be able to live in a country that is governed in an efficient and in an optimal way? Most of our municipalities, if we look at the auditor reports, are signaling something very, very scary. But this is not a new phenomenon as well, right? We've seen this over the past decade that this has been happening. And the inability of the ANC to actually rectify and remedy this is probably the issue that we need to discuss as to why are we still consistently failing in this regard, and what is it about the quality of the people in our institutions that does not produce the kinds of governance strategic outputs that will be discussed within the policy conference as well within the documents themselves.
We have touched on the issue of deployment. Cadre deployment policy of the ANC has been criticized at the Zondo Commission. Opposition political parties have slammed it. The ANC will vigorously defend the deployment policy or Cadre deployment policy. But does the ANC run administration? Is it streamlined? They can run, they can have political power, but do they actually run the administration and the technocrats that are supposed to be doing the work and implementing their policies?
I think there's a fundamental disjuncture between the people that are going to be sitting here versus the people that are part of the bureaucratic arm of the state, or those who are technocrats as well. And so there is a misalignment between people who are actually fundamentally involved in the shaping of policy of the ANC and those in many ways are responsible for the governance of institutions and making sure that these institutions function optimally. And so in the presence of that disjuncture, it really does spark a conversation of whether or not the ANC's Cadre deployment policy aligns with the requirements of the bureaucratic arm of the state. And most of the time you find that that's not the case, and which is why we are finding ourselves in these kinds of situations that are not only related to state capture, right? It really is about the capacity of our institutions to function optimally and to sort of live out the kinds of requirements that are set out within their mandate. And this is failing considerably.
Let's talk about socio-economic challenges plaguing this country, the issues of, youth unemployment, poverty, inequality, sluggish economic growth, energy crisis. What will it take to fix all those challenges once and for all? The policy proposals and discussions that will take place here have taken place in the past, and nothing has come out of it. In fact, it's getting worse. Do you think this gathering will produce a desired outcome that will better shape the lives of South Africans as the ANC is the governing party?
I don't I'm not optimistic, rather, let me say that, because we've seen conferences year after year that have pronounced some very critical recommendations, have taken some very serious resolutions, but the inability to transfer those resolutions into sort of the day-to-day governance of the country is where the crisis lies in South Africa. And so the inability of the ANC to sort of transfer its political prowess into institutions is a critical problem. And also I think the problem with these particular conferences is that they don't deal with the very critical policy issues that we are finding in the state. So will this conference make some sort of resolution around basic income grants? What does the policy say about global austerity, and how does that implicate our economy as well, and sort of the austerity measures that we've actually seen our own government sort of introducing into the fiscus? And what is the role of state-owned enterprises or state institutions around the draining of the fiscus or the debt with the fiscus? But I don't think that this kind of policy, that this conference is making or having those kinds of conversations. So we're finding very rudimentary discussions taking place here, whereas high-level issues are actually taking place at the seat of government.
Thank you very much for time. That is Lihle Ngobuzi there, who is the analyst here, well as delegates are trickling in. We'll have to take it back to you in studio.
Thank you very much for that. That's senior reporter Siphamandla Goge.